What is up, everybody? Live Reality Games World. It is Dom, and we are once again back for a Survivor Grand Rapids Fresh Meat episode recap. As always, I am joined with Drew. Drew, how did you like this last episode? How's it been?
I love this episode. It was a great, although I am sad with the final result, which we'll get to in just a moment. I think there were some fun moments. I always love touchy subjects, and that tribal was very dramatic in the best way.
It was a classic Survivor, I feel like, episode. A lot of, we finally got a split vote going on. Somebody organized that finally, and we did have a really fun challenge. Charlie's been a part. Have you played that game, Charlie? Touchy subjects?
Oh yeah, I was the one who won the most wanted or the person that got voted out next, and then
best smile,
in the best position to win all those kind of stuff.
So our seasoned veteran, two-season veteran, and current production member Charlie is also here joining us. He is going to provide some of his insights on this episode and what has happened so far in the game, especially with our latest casualty of the merge, our fifth jury member. And without further ado, please be aware of spoilers from this point out. If you haven't seen it, go watch episode 11. But without further ado, everybody, please bow down to your Rat King. How we doing, Kyle?
I am doing very good today.
Nice. Good to hear. So, Kyle, you, for better or worse, you were the fan favorite. It seemed like, in our comment section on our YouTube videos, people couldn't stop talking enough about you. How has been watching the season back for you?
It's been really fun. Just like, I forgot most of the stuff I even did, so it's funny to me to see me do it, and then also hear like the backside of what everyone else is thinking. It's just very interesting to me.
Yeah. So, Kyle, you were the latest casualty of the merge, and throughout the entire season, you were shocked at yourself that you were still there. Did you think that you would make it as far as you did?
Like I've probably said before on camera, no, I did not. I didn't see myself making it anywhere near the merge. So
I think you said it multiple times, multiple episodes.
Yeah.
But you surprised me. You surprised, I think, everybody on production. You got your standing ovation on your exit. So we'll dive into your game. Drew, what was watching Kyle's game as a whole like for you?
Kyle, you were so fun. And I think early on in the game, I was like, Kyle is in this position where he's constantly like an extra vote for people. And I just need him to realize that that's his strategy. And then in the middle of the season, you said in a confessional, yeah, I'm basically just an extra vote for people. So that's what I have to keep doing. And I was like, yes, he's got it. And I had confidence in you. I think that you played a pretty solid game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Charlie, behind the scenes, what was it like watching Kyle? I know you did a couple confessionals with him here and there. Maybe you filmed him a little bit. Yeah. What was it like watching Kyle develop throughout the season?
Oh, it's so fun. I mean, we didn't really know what to expect from Kyle because Kyle, we had only met a few times prior to the season, and we didn't talk a ton. So you were one of Dominic's friends that I didn't really know much about going into. And I think all of production was just, you were one of our favorites. It was a blast. Everyone wanted to do confessionals with you. Everyone wanted to film you talking. If you don't win fan favorite this season, fan favorite voting is screwed. So you were a lot of fun.
Yeah. So Kyle, you came into this game technically a veteran. You played 2 seasons of the drinking version, and you were voted out either first or second in those. What was it like going from playing your day version to playing this for you?
Well, you do have some takeaways from the day one, but it is a whole new game. I mean, it's a lot more strategic, and the day one, everyone was kind of having fun, relaxing. I mean, this one, it was, as soon as boots hit the ground, I mean, you got to go. It's rough. It was pretty rough, but I mean, it was fun.
So your big story, I feel like, throughout was finding your place, not just in the tribe, but also in the game. In episode 1, we see you come into the game as, the bird bath worker, like making your bird baths. You don't really have a lot to contribute. I think you were going around in the strengths department, and your strength was that you're not very social. What was it like for you kind of adapting to that game environment? What was your game plan going in?
Yeah, so going into there, I kind of knew I was a little screwed to begin with because I am not good at talking to new people. I am awful at it, and it was definitely a comfort zone stepping out of it, you know. But as I kind of met more people and talked to them, I kind of got okay. I need to make allies. Like I need to at least have someone, and that was my goal going into it. And I guess I did okay. I mean, it kind of worked.
So, yeah, you were on the winning tribe. It seemed like if you were to lose, you were going home, and you got that sense kind of, but you guys kept winning. And while you were winning, you were forming like those alliances. So who, I guess, on your original Ionia tribe did you feel the most secure with?
Um, Honestly, I would say who I felt most secure with was Mark. I accidentally called him Max by accident because again I'm terrible at names. But yeah, Mark just because he came up to me pretty much. I mean, he was the first person to come up to me and talk to me, and I'm like, okay, somebody's talking to me. I can kind of trust him. And from that point, it kind of just we kind of stuck. But I know I may have flipped on that at some point.
Yeah, I mean, going into the end of day one, it was the big kind of standoff between the boys and the girls. The girls had pitched you, and you guys were going for Hannah or something, and then Hannah ended up going home because her back was messed up. But how was that whole day one? Did you expect? I know we keep asking, did you expect to make it that far? But did you expect to be as involved into the strategy as you were?
I did not at all. I knew that Hannah vote. I thought myself. I knew for sure. I thought I was going home. I mean, when she said I'm gonna like volunteer myself, I was like, oh, thank God, I can keep playing because I knew if she hadn't done that, I was going home. So I did not see myself getting that involved around like even to like first day, second day kind. But I mean, I kind of got a little more involved. I mean, I again, like I've said, I was kind of like the extra vote, so I kind of just tagged along with whatever everybody else was saying. That's how I played, I guess.
Was there strategy behind that? Like, was there ever a name that would come up and you were like, actually, I don't really want to do that?
No. I again, I just went with majority. I mean, I had almost no allies, and I was just kind of floating, and it kind of worked.
Mm-hmm.
It worked for you certainly once we got to the swap. Not to jump ahead too much, but I mean that's basically your pre-swap. We get to the swap, and then immediately you're like, "Yeah, cool. I'm not in anything with my tribe, so I might as well work with this other tribe."
Mm-hmm.
What was your thought process in flipping on that vote to get rid of Zoe?
Yeah, my thought process, because she seemed like she really wanted me out, which I don't know why. I don't look like a threat to really anyone. I'm the least threatening person on that whole game, but I don't know how I managed to flip it, but I kind of made it seem like okay, she's doing too much thinking or like trying too strategically too early on, and people just kind of went along with it and flipped with me, and I was like, okay, maybe my voice actually does matter a little bit.
Because you immediately, like almost immediately, Addison came up to you and you were right there with Addison and we were like, yeah, like I'm ready to go. And it seemed like you were close with Addison and Tom. Did those relationships like carry over at all into any merge, or was that just you two like kind of just bonding at the beginning?
I kind of I stuck more towards Addison just because I do know him personally through Grand Rapids, and I kind of tried to make it seem like we were together, but I knew we were getting close to where everyone's out for everyone, and he at the time I think he still had the hidden immunity idol, so I was like, okay,
Yeah.
maybe if I stick with this guy, he'll help me out through merge. But once we got to that, I was kind of like, okay, now it's anyone's ball game, and I just gotta play me.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, you guys we see you kind of play the same game throughout the entire swap. You're flipping to both sides. You're telling people like your plans or whatever, but you're also like you're listening more than you're telling. And uh, how much of that was like your game? Like we saw you kind of like, was that just volunteering information, or like what was like your game plan? I guess moving forward, were you intentionally throwing people under the bus, or was that just Kyle's game?
I would put it as that's just my game. I mean, really anything to just deflect anything from me because I knew I was like I said, I was an extra vote, but I was also just an extra castaway. I mean, if they wanted to move to next round without losing anyone serious, they just get me out. So anything to deflect my name away from getting voted off was my go plan, I guess.
Yeah, I think that was your biggest strength in the game, and ultimately that did end up being your biggest weakness, was that you were pitching yourself to everybody as, hey, I don't know how I got here, but since I am here, I'm just an extra vote. So you guys just tell me who to vote, and I'll go with you. And unfortunately, eventually we get to the point where they're like, well, Kyle's an easy person to get out since we're flushing this idol, so he's just an extra vote, so let's just get rid of him. But I think it worked for you for the time that you used it throughout that swap and that early merge.
Yeah, Charlie, I feel like Kyle is a very unique game player, at least for our series. How would you have navigated that in our seasons past with Survivor Dearborn? Like, would you have wanted to work with Kyle? Would you have kept him closer? Like, what?
I would
what
I would
was the
definitely
read
have
on
tried to work with Kyle. I think Kyle, like you said, presented himself well as someone who is willing to work with anyone. And I also think Kyle, I don't know if this was intentional or not, but presented him as someone that could end up with the final three with you and you could beat. Like he wasn't trying to come off as too threatening. Like he wanted people to think, yeah, take me along and as long as you can, because you can beat me. But then holding out hope that he had that chance in the end with jury's favor. I definitely would have wanted to play with him. I think, like Drew said, it kind of came down to his gameplay can only last so long. When you're thinking about round to round rather than rounds ahead of time, then it's just going to catch up to you,
Yeah. So Kyle, we drop our buffs, you guys merge, and we have a string of big players go home. You have Liam, you have Jen, you have Spencer, which was the vote that you stuck around, stuck with Spencer for. At what point did you really kind of feel the game start to pick up?
Yeah, I really feel like after that Spencer vote, that's when it really kind of set the tone for how rough it was going to be, because it was the final vote of the second day, and it was just kind of like a what's going on kind of ordeal. And it just felt like from there it was like everyone's out for everyone. Like there were no more like alliances and individual. It was just everyone for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I have several questions about the
Yeah.
Spencer vote. So you were the only person to vote with Spencer on that vote. Did you know that the plan was to get Spencer out?
I knew the plan was to get Spencer out, but I honestly enjoyed Spencer. Again, he was a Grand Rapids person, so I kind of knew him and I somewhat trusted him. So I didn't want to see him go, but I kind of knew that was the plan.
Right. So then the vote goes through. Obviously, everybody knows somebody votes with Spencer, but everybody denies it, including you. Did you ever expect coming into the game that you would lie on this?
Oh, no,
it's not a huge lie, but like it's a lie. And I just didn't see you at the beginning of the game. Yeah, I didn't see you at the beginning of the game. I was like, I don't know if this is the type of player who's going to do this, but when you did, I was so glad that you did.
Oh yeah, I definitely was like playing. I'm like, I'm just gonna lie. Like I don't want to be the odd man out, so I just lied.
Well, and I think that little subtle thing, voting with Spencer because he was your ally and sticking with him, like that can garner respect from a jury. I tend to like that move sometimes, especially when you're able to pull it off without letting everyone know that it was you doing it. I did that myself a couple times in the season, and I had people that were on the jury. I never made the final three, but people on the jury were like, if you made the final three, like we respected that, Mm-hmm. I think people would have liked that if you're sticking with your allies. I liked that move.
I did too, Kyle. I think it's a pretty ballsy thing to do and then turn around and lie to it, because it seems to be a theme for this season at least. You might be the first person that has lied about their vote. Like we constantly will come back from tribal council and like Tom will receive votes or like Ryan will receive votes and everybody's like, oh yeah, like I voted for you. And they're just like, okay, like whatever. Yeah. Like I think you were the first person that like straight up just bullshitted like your lie about who you voted for. And I was like, okay, like guess Kyle's playing. And that was your big breakout episode, The Rat King Cometh. You spend the night on day 3 and you wake up the next morning, seemed to be a new man. You had your Sniper Monkey shirt on, ready to take on the day. You had your nice cargo pants on, or cargo shorts on, I should say. And you won your first immunity. What was that like for you?
It was a pretty a thrilling event. I mean, I never really would have thought I'd ever touch that necklace. I've seen it, and I even had Ryan give it to me because I was like, I'm never gonna see this thing. I just want to wear it once. And then actually winning it, I was like, oh my god, like I don't have to worry about getting voted out next time.
Yeah, you're a challenge beast.
Yeah, you have more challenge wins than Charlie does. You have more challenge wins than I think Anthony does. There's a handful of other Dearborn people that you have,
You have more challenge wins than Dom does.
True. We'll see what happens on the next season if I play. But yeah, Kyle, you come in. I feel like this is when we start to see you get a little bit looser and a little more confident with your gameplay. That was when Addison gets sent home, and you kind of like pitch that to him. I feel like had you not won immunity, they would have been able to successfully flush his idol because they would have just run back this last episode an episode earlier. Does that make sense? I feel like you winning really threw a wrench into things, and like nobody really wanted to get rid of Addison. No one really wanted to get rid of Bridget. Like it was a whole thing, but you committed kind of to that Addison vote. What was that like? I know Addison, you said was you were working with him at least on day 2. By the time day 3 hit, where were your alliances like kind of going in, or were you just lone man out there, lone sniper monkey?
Yeah, so like I had said, going into the 3rd day, it was kind of everyone's game at that point. After that Spencer vote, it all kind of just went downhill. And Addison seemed like obviously a target. I mean, people always label tall guys targets. I don't know why. I never did, but everyone does that. So I was like, okay, I'll go with it. So I kind of just threw his name out because it was like just an easy target. We get rid of somebody who is a decent competitor. And like I said, if I didn't get immunity, it probably would have been me. Like I kind of can sense it at that point because I was that one kind of like just scapegoating through basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that round where you won immunity definitely saved you. And then unfortunately, because it kind of balances out, I guess, because you won the immunity that saved you. And then the next round, I think the only reason you went out was because Ryan had the idol. I think if Ryan didn't have, and we'll get there in a second, but yeah. I think if Ryan didn't have that idol, you probably make it through that round.
I agree. I think I don't know when you would have gotten cut had Ryan not had that idol. Like I could see like a run to the end. Like I honestly don't know if you would have been able to win any of the other immunities that are left, but you at least had that one. I'm being honest. Like from what we have going on, and I think you might have seen a couple when we were filming it, but no spoilers for that. But I think the rest were kind of rough. But the one that you did win, I think, did save you, and I want to like see a universe where you would be able to make it, like just make a final plea at final tribal council. But then so Addison gets voted out. Ryan still has his idol, and that is where we find the start of episode 11, going into this next round. Kyle, what was your headspace at after Ryan bluffs not just once but his second time with his idol?
Yeah, so kind of at that point, I kind of clicked with me. I was like, I'm probably going home. Like, it was like, I'm kind of like, I knew it. I mean, winning the immunity too, I felt like put like a target on my back because people were like, okay, he's kind of noticed, we got to get rid of him. And Ryan not flushing it kind of was like, oh man, like I'm going next. So I kind of pretty much knew after the next challenge that it was my time.
So when did you concoct your plan to get your fake idol?
I cannot. I may have found it I think I found it the second day. I actually found it the second day. It was tucked behind a barn. I just randomly found it, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna try and play it off because at some point I'm gonna be on the chopping block. May as well go out with a bang, So I just kind of grabbed it, and I think it was the second day I found it, but I just saw it right away. I was like, I'm using this. I got to do it.
Some behind the scenes stuff. Kyle gave multiple confessionals with me on that second day where he's like, yeah, I might be going home, but I've got something up my sleeve. And I'm like, Kyle, what is it? And he's like, I'm not telling you. I'm like, no, you have to like tell me so we can figure this out for the episode. It was so funny.
Yeah, there were multiple confessionals where you said like, oh, I may have a trick up my sleeve. And Dom asked me last week, Dom was like, what do you think he has up his sleeve, if anything? And I was like, he has nothing. Like, unless there's a universe in which you secretly found an advantage, he has nothing. But why would you not tell? Anyways, I have a question about this fake idol. So with this cast, did you consider telling anyone that you had an idol, even though you know it's not real? Did you consider telling people you have an idol so maybe votes don't go on you?
I really thought about that, and like looking back, I probably should have done that because it probably would have scared
Yeah,
some
because
people.
what was the point in playing a fake idol if nobody thought it
Well,
was? If
there were
nobody knew you
times where
had
I
it?
would there were times where I would put it in my pocket and like try and like position it so like people notice like, oh, he's got something in his pocket. But I guess it just never went in my mind like, okay, I gotta say something like, like just point it out. But I feel like if I showed somebody that thing, they'd never believe me. So I had to just go with it. And I
Kyle,
kind of wanted that like shock value too, just at the end, just like everyone going like, "Oh my god!" Like I just
Oh,
wanted the
they
shock
were.
value.
Kyle, in seasons past, I had a fork as a immunity idol and a stick. So I think you could have convinced a couple people about it, particularly because of how paranoid this entire cast is the majority of the time. I think also just a fun note, Charlie was saying how you constantly were saying you had something up your sleeves as you're wearing a sleeveless shirt.
Yeah.
And your card goes, I'm sure like maybe if you wore different pants and didn't have a million pockets on your pants, people might have noticed something in your pocket.
Yeah, it was a good choice in wardrobe. I liked the tucked in look too with them. It was so good.
You should wait till the first council I'm in. You're gonna love it. You're gonna.
Yeah. I wish I had my Ponderosa videos edited. Kyle's is a hoot. He literally gets out of the game, wears his girlfriend's shirt because he doesn't have a clean one, and then plays like Guitar Hero the rest of the day. Like, so we'll get to that point, but that's already outside the game. That's a little bit behind the scenes. Let's go to the comment section real quick before we kind of get deep into this episode reviewing it. Matt asked, Kyle, what would your final three pitch have been if you made it to the final three?
Okay, well, wait, can you like sum that up for me? I don't really know how to answer.
So
Like,
had you made it all the way to the final three, what would you have said to the jury that would have made them vote for you? Like, what was your like big thing that would have sold you?
oh man, I probably would have just stood up and be like, I really don't know how I got here, but it's been one hell of a ride, and I've had some fun meeting you guys. I mean, I'd be honest, like I'd just be open and just chill. Like that's kind of how I played the whole game, pretty much.
Nice.
And like I don't have any like flex of like, oh, I had this strategic plan planned out, or like I was like everyone's like go-to man. Like I was just riding the wave and just seeing what happens. Not much I can say. I mean,
still a respectable pitch, I believe. And then I guess Drew, this could be for you. Who had a better fake idol play, Mark or Kyle?
I don't know how to answer this.
I think we're picking between two evils right now.
Well, Kyle's was more fun to watch everybody else react to, but Mark put in more work for his. Like he actually put in the social work to convince people he had an idol. So like honestly, both were a lot of fun for me. So I can't give an answer. I think the reactions when Kyle, when you stood up and pulled something out of your pocket, the faces that everybody made, top tier entertainment.
It was fun.
Yeah, I remember seeing the shot of Bridget's face. She was just destroyed because like she thought she was going home.
Yeah, but speaking of like rewinding a little bit back to the start of the episode, speaking of putting in some social work, it seems like we have a handful of people that are emerging as the people that are dictating each round. I believe, maybe Sydney, Juliana, Bridget, and Tom, and maybe even Claire are, putting in the work, I feel, socially to be able to create the narrative for the episode. This time we started off a little bit rocky because Sydney had to do some damage control with Ryan. Charlie, I'm sure this might hit a little close to home, so could you kind of fill us in a little bit what you were thinking back when Sydney decided to vote for Ryan and then had to tell him that after
had to tell him.
Well, that's the thing. We talked about it after watching the episode. I mean, she definitely regrets telling him that. I think that's just kind of what the vibe with the whole cast was, that people were doing that. So she thought that was something people would want to hear. But in actuality, I think Ryan's all very different than the rest of the cast. I think Ryan's mind works differently than the rest of the cast. So it's definitely not the best move telling him that. I think trying to get Ryan out was smart. And I think, really going for that even more would have been better off for her game so that she could have taken more credit for those kind of things. But I definitely do think that telling him wasn't the best move in the world.
I will say one thing about Sydney that I've started noticing, and I've been a Sydney fan from the beginning. You kind of have three different gameplay styles. You have the people who are really strategic players, you have people who are really strong socially, and then you have people who are really good at the challenges. And up until this point, Sydney has been a really strong social player. And while she's been making strategic decisions, I think the past couple of episodes, we've really seen her pivot into that strategic side. Her throwing Bridget's name out was kind of like, oh wow, that's a lot. And then Bridget finding out about it. I think Sydney is really transitioning at this point in the game to focusing more on strategy than social, and I'm interested to see where that goes.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle, I can't remember. Did you have any run-ins with her? Did you guys work together on anything or talk game at all?
Probably not. Probably not. I'm gonna be honest, probably not. I mean, I didn't really talk game with anyone. I just kind of went with whatever.
Floated around to the conversations. Yeah, I couldn't remember.
Yeah, Sydney had an interesting episode. I feel like she's had, like you said, an interesting past couple episodes because I do think her mind is there strategically and like she's making the moves that you should make, but the rest of the cast is maybe not on the same page.
The problem is she's so well socially set up that at this point, every round having to throw a name out is hurting her.
It's a knife in the back.
Set up.
Yeah, it's a knife in the back to other people. And I think, you got to be able to make the move at the right time and then take credit for the move at the right time, too. You don't want to always be seen as the person that's doing it. Yeah. And she had such a strong start to the game, too, that when things start to not go her way, it seems even worse than what it is. I still think she's one of the stronger players in the game.
Agreed.
To this point. But, yeah, it was an interesting episode for her, for sure.
Speaking of making moves, I do have a question about who made a specific move, because I know that there's been discussion about this. So obviously everybody, especially Taylor was like, okay, we're getting rid of the Ryan's idol this episode. Like, we're doing it. Whose idea was it initially? Who pitched to put the 2 votes on Kyle? Was it Juliana? Was it Sydney?
Juliana. I think it was both Juliana and Bridget. So the conversation really happened with, I think Kyle's name generally was always out there as somebody that can go home on a Ryan vote, but nobody was committing to any plan. So after the challenge, they kind of got together and it was Tom, Juliana, and Bridget, and they're all like, here's what we need to do. We're all okay with seeing Kyle go. This is what we need to do. And so it was a kind of a combination 1-2 of Juliana and Bridget moving forward. I think Tom initially got the conversation started about flushing the idol, but like easy for Tom to say when he's not receiving any votes.
I don't believe actually it's Tom, so maybe I do believe it. When everybody was like, oh yeah, good, like interesting, Tom, that you're saying it now that you have immunity. He was like, oh, I didn't even consider that.
I don't think he considered
I don't think I was gonna say he did, and then I realized it was Tom.
Yeah, so it was kind of a combination of Juliana and Bridget. Bridget was doing something else though, and she was like, I don't know if it'll play out into this episode or this next episode, but she would be going around and she would be saying like, oh yeah, Juliana came up with this plan to do this, when it was very much a combination of 50-50. So that might have gotten lost in the edit where it kind of gets confusing, but it was very much that group having that discussion first. I do think Sydney might have been involved in the beginning of the conversation.
He was in that first group. I know that for sure. Yeah, there was Tom, Sydney, Bridget, and Juliana.
Yeah. But when it came down to where the numbers were going to lie, I think it was the other one.
Yeah, she didn't talk about splitting the vote. I don't think anyone can take credit for flushing Ryan's idol because everyone wanted to do that and everyone was planning on doing that. The split vote was Bridget and Juliana's idea for sure.
Because we hear from Juliana about it in confessionals, but then Sydney is the one who kind of tells the group about it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I just wanted clarity on who is the one who got that, group of girls together to disseminate that.
Yeah. So before we even kind of get into how that whole vote out happened, I do kind of want to touch on some touchy subjects of that challenge. Kyle, you had a fantastic little segment of you writing down everybody for, who you thought didn't deserve to be there, who you thought the smelliest was. And then going into the challenge, you were out almost immediately. what did you think of that, like, going in?
Going in, when I got voted out pretty quickly, I was immediately like, okay, I have a target on my back. Like, these people want me out. Like, it clicked with me right away. Like, there's no reason they wouldn't do that without wanting to get me out. Because, I mean, they clearly didn't want to give me even a shot of getting immunity idol this time. So I instantly walking away, I'm like, okay, I'm done. Like, I'm going home after this.
So I always like this challenge because it really does divvy up where everybody's at, and it makes people aware. I mean, we kind of expected Kyle to get all out of those, negative, not so negative ones, but more like, if you could vote somebody out, what would you do? Or who would it be? Who doesn't deserve to be here? Mostly because you spent this entire season saying, I don't know how I got here, which is fine. But some other people that were getting those were like Claire and Brendan. And I don't know necessarily how you guys may think about that. Drew, what were your thoughts about both Kyle, Claire, and Brendan all kind of getting grouped into like this negative mindset or negative position?
Negative, yeah. So Kyle, like yours, you were able to laugh it off. So I was like, okay, I don't feel bad. Like, it happened, and like you clearly didn't care. Claire, like, was visibly not happy. I feel really bad for Claire. I think I texted Dom after the episode. I was like, is Claire okay? Because yikes. Brendan didn't seem to have any reaction to his, and also the ones that he got I agreed with. So
yeah, I think Claire kind of got a bad rep this episode, at least during this challenge, because when we've been watching all season, I think she's been fighting the most from like the bottom, at least throughout that pre-merge. And during the merge, like, she's been able to navigate it pretty well. So I didn't really agree with where the cast stood on that. Charlie, what about you? What were your thoughts on where Claire has been at in this game?
Well, I think people lump her into the group of someone who's kind of coasting through right now. I think that's been evident when her name comes up just in kind of a throwaway manner.
Yeah.
I think she's taken a little more agency as time has gone on. I don't think everyone really recognizes that, but I think as a viewer, we're able to recognize it through some of her talk and confessionals and everything. But I do think that she has kind of been lumped into kind of the group of people who could just go home and no one would really think twice about it.
Yeah.
So throughout this challenge, another thing, so Kyle gets nixed first, Taylor's shortly after him, Juliana, Sydney. The one person that everybody is scared to not win immunity is sitting pretty, Ryan, without getting stuff into his bucket. I do know Claire, another point to her game, Claire was kind of actively trying not to do it so that she can build the bond with him and not be voted out with his idol, like not have votes cast to her. But I don't know if everybody else's mindset with that. Bridget seemed to be the only one that was openly like putting stuff in his basket. What were your thoughts on that kind of going forward?
I mean, it makes sense why Juliana wouldn't do it, because Juliana and Ryan have their thing. It kind of makes sense why Sydney wouldn't do it, even though she just told Ryan that she voted for him. But for everybody else, like when I'm looking at people like Taylor, who, I mean, to be fair, she wasn't in the challenge very long. I just don't get it. If you have an obvious target, and we saw how dead set Taylor was on flushing the idol out in that round, why would you not get out the person who you don't want to win immunity first?
Well, also there's a way to play this game, just kind of like politically. Like you go immediately for the person you want to get out, but Ryan was the only one I saw doing this strategy where you vote for people who you give them their third vote, so they're out of the game, and they can't do the easy, oh, I'm going to vote for you because you voted for me. Nobody else was doing that. There's a way to play that game, and everybody was just trying to even out. They were just trying to be too nice with it and being like, oh, this person's at 1, everybody else is at 2, so I'll put one in theirs. Like, it's like, no, you gotta think about who's going to vote for you next.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I'll be out for yourself in that game.
Yes, I completely agree. I will also say, Dom, you know I love you. I do have a gripe about this challenge.
Yeah.
I love the challenge itself, but I think that it puts certain people at an extreme disadvantage when you have the order of the rock drops start from the same end every time. Because you have
alternating.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I messed up once. It was my initial plan, I was trying to alternate it, and then somebody got Juliana out and she was on the other end, and I was like, oh well, Juliana, just go ahead. Like, and then it just messed up my whole flow. So I was trying to alternate it a little bit, but yes, I completely agree. And when I was editing it, it does kind of create a little bit of a.
It makes certain people have to play offense a lot more frequently than others.
We might just even have to do like random drawing next time. I don't.
Or
think
just have everybody write their name on a board and flip it for who they want to give a rock to.
They all draw for spots, and so I do also think that is the luck of the draw, and that happens in all of our challenges that we do. You know, you could be at the absolute end away, like in the balance challenge, balance immunity challenge. You could be at the absolute end away from the wind and like you're off scot-free, or you could be, you know, the first one picked to go first in touchy subjects and draw first blood. I do think it's part of the luck of the draw, but again, no, I noted, I did think that was a little bit interesting, but I do think that the people would have gotten out eventually. And the only, you know, end result that would have really changed was maybe Tom didn't win immunity, but it was a really interesting combo of the last four of Tom, Claire, Brendan, and Bridget. And those seem to be the people that have been playing this very, you know, votey block game of being able to alternate, you know, alliances and moving forward. Did anybody else, did that stand out to anybody else, especially with Tom winning on this very social challenge? Did that, like, Drew, I guess, did that boost Tom's social, I don't know, social agency in the game?
The moment that I saw this challenge was touchy subjects, I knew that Tom was going to win. I think I texted Dom that before I started watching the challenge. I said, I think Tom's got this, because mid-game, Tom's name was coming up in conversations a little bit, but Tom is so well positioned socially and no one's looking at him as a threat. So like, who would want to get Tom out of this challenge? Like, he's not somebody who people want to vote out, but he's also not like somebody at the front. So I figured Tom would make it far, if not win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's always one of my favorite challenges to do. Like I said, it really kind of draws the lines. Not so much for the contestants. I know some people are salty. Why are they so mean and whatever? Like, a lot of it is out of fun, but a lot of it does, you know, make people start to think about where they're at. And I do think that translated into the post-merge canoodling. I think that was when everybody was like, okay, like, this is where we're at. We need to be able to do this. Like, and that kind of gets the ball rolling a little bit. Yeah, Juliana and Ryan, I guess, before kind of have this bond or agreement, we'll say, alliance agreement. And I feel like that kind of follows into the post-merge or post-challenge canoodling, where she seems to be like gunning for him, but still wants to be able to like alert him of that.
Yep.
Drew, what was that like kind of watching back for you? Did you see like...
It's mutually beneficial. It's mutually beneficial because not only does Ryan now have somebody who he can count on to give him information and tell him when he needs to play the idol, when he's clearly the person who everybody's targeting, it also gives Juliana an extra vote. And then also, when Ryan is inevitably taken out, when he doesn't win immunity, Juliana has that connection on the jury.
Mm-hmm.
So whether she's thinking about that or not, I think it's mutually beneficial. I love it.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite, you know, realizations with Juliana wanting to take Ryan to the final three is, you know, if she loses a final four challenge, they're going to go for Ryan before they go for her. So I think that's thinking ahead in the right way possible. And Drew, I guess if Juliana and Ryan were to sit at the finals, who do you have your money on right off the bat with that?
My gut says Juliana.
Interesting. Okay.
But I don't know. That was without me taking a ton of time to think about it. But my gut says Juliana. I mean, Ryan has played a much more visible game, but I think Juliana's done a really good job socially, especially considering, yeah, she's just really well positioned. And she has the Spencer move in her back pocket that nobody knows that she was the one who spearheaded, that she can bring up at Final Tribal. I mean, she has a lot in her arsenal that I think is very understated, that I could see her coming up and having a great Final Tribal. Whereas Ryan's game has been so visible, I'm not sure what all he could add to it.
I also wanted to point out with this Ryan Juliana alliance, it kind of parallels Ryan and Jen's at the beginning of the merge, where they had this similar setup where they were like, oh, we're two of the stronger players, we can keep each other aware of what's happening. I'd be interested to talk to Ryan about, why he was so willing to flip on Jen so quickly in that alliance, and what's different about his alliance with Juliana, and what she did well to make sure that they had a stronger connection than Jen and him did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I think there's a lot of parallels with Ryan's game, at least like finding that one person that he can really kind of move with. Originally, he wanted it to be Sydney.
The way he phrased that was so.
It was bad. He was
not going to take that. Yeah.
But I think we're starting to see kind of like a pattern with Ryan's game, and who he wants to align himself with. I do give him respect for wanting to align with some big move makers, and that also is kudos to both Juliana and Sydney for also wanting to like play with those big, like a big player like Ryan, and not be scared of that. Kyle, during like this whole canoodle sesh, did you have any like idea of where things were going to go, or were you just kind of enjoying your swing?
I'd say it was a little bit of both. I mean, I kind of got the huge hint I am going home. I mean, it kind of right off the bat with the challenge and me getting knocked out right away. But I was also just kind of like, I'm still here. May as well have a little bit of fun and just soak it in. So, I mean, going in, I'm like, yeah, I'm going home. I mean, it wasn't any big shocker to me.
I know right after Survivor, had to be a weekend or two after, we were sitting at the bar and you were like, yeah, like I've just been rethinking it over and over. I should have just voted for it. Like, was that at any point thought of like in your mind? Like, did you think to go for Bridget, or can like talk to Ryan and ask who he was voting for?
I think in the moment, I think I was just so excited to see everyone's like shock value when I pulled out hidden immunity. I didn't even think about it. But like looking back at it, it would have been a very smart move, because I've noticed Ryan has had it out for Bridget for so long. It would have been a very smart move for me to do that, because I would have lasted one more round. I mean, it would have been one more round, but it's whatever.
If you could have had the decision, like if you were to vote one person, that's who would have gone home. Who would it be at this point in this episode instead of you?
Oh, that's a tough one. I feel like everyone has. I mean, even some people have played stronger games. I think everyone has played a really smart game to where they've gotten at now. But I would have to. That's a tough one. I would want to say Bridget, but I mean, Bridget has played so smart, and she's always kind of had that target on her back. But like, that was just kind of my thought process.
Yeah.
We haven't talked a lot about Bridget. I am confused with Bridget a little bit. And I don't think it's her fault, and I don't think it's Dom's fault on the editing. I just don't know how I feel about Bridget's game, because her name is constantly brought up by people who she's supposedly working with, and somehow every round the vote turns on to someone else, but I don't necessarily know that it's her doing.
Well, I think part of that is that she's working with so many people, and people kind of recognize that. And so like, she's not someone's number one, but she's a lot of people's number 2 or 3. And so they're more willing to cut off a 2 or 3 than they are a 1,
That makes sense.
I think she's navigating it decently well. Like,
yeah,
in terms of she's gotten close a couple times, but it hasn't come to fruition yet.
I do think that she's, I think I understand where you're coming from, Drew, because I'm also kind of confused with that. I think Sydney wants to go for her because she is, playing a very identical game to kind of what Sydney is, and Sydney wants to like distinguish herself from that, but she's also waiting for the right moment to do so, because if she gets rid of Bridget, she'll also like be the only person kind of playing that game, and then Tom wants to go for Bridget because he hasn't trusted Bridget from, I don't know, he'll say since day one or whatever, but
yeah, as they were in a final 3 by like round 2 of the game.
But I think since she went for Jen, or aligned with Jen over Tom, I think there's this underlying like, I need to go for Bridget, yet always like I feel like a better plan gets presented to him and he'll hop on that. But it's still a very integral storyline, because Bridget will also go and do work to get the name off of her, like what happened with Addison, and then Ryan this round went around and spread the Bridget name, and Sydney's name was thrown in there somehow. I still to this day I don't know how. Like, I
probably
think
just Brennan Esper thinking he's going to throw a vote on someone random.
There's literally like a scene that like cut because there's like no context, but it's like Sydney talking to Brendan. He's like, oh, like, what'd you talk about? And he goes, oh, well, your name was thrown out. She goes, by you? And he's like, oh, it would be on brand. And it is it's interesting to see how like a lot of these girls are able to have their name thrown out, but nothing really seems to like pick up steam. Taylor's another one whose name keeps getting thrown out as somebody who just like
Taylor and Claire and Bridget.
Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like this dynamic of like we need to keep them in the back of our head, but like right now Ryan's idol is like the main
priority,
the main focus. And I do think you know, if Kyle maybe was more involved in the discussion, like they very easily could have like swung a vote onto Bridget and had like Tom or somebody switch up and do it. Like it's very thin line. I feel like a lot of them are walking.
I will also say, going back to Bridget, I think one thing that Bridget has done extremely well, aside from her being really good in challenges, is she got the information that Sydney threw her name out, and you can almost visually see, she goes like, oh, really? Interesting. And you can see her like mentally bank that. And then the next conversation group she's with is with Sydney, and she acts like nothing is wrong. And I think that she's done a really good job of like, okay, I know my name is out there. I know who's saying my name, but I have to keep pretending that nothing is wrong because there are other priorities above me right now. And I think that Bridget's doing a really good job at that.
Yeah, definitely navigating things well.
Yeah, and so we get to tribal council, and I grill them. This was a rough tribal council I feel to be sitting at, because a lot of them I did question what they were doing, what they were like, what they received in the touchy subjects, how that made them feel. And Taylor drops a bomb, and she's just straight up told Juliana that she's a threat. And I think that got kind of swept under the rug at this tribal council because there were so many big moments. But that is massive because that never happens on our Survivor shows, like on mine, that nobody directly calls out somebody in a way that like I feel like Taylor did. Drew, what was it like kind of watching that? Did it have as big of an impact on you?
I think when you asked Taylor that question and she started speaking, I was like, oh, she's going to be real direct here. And she realized that and stopped. And the way that you did the music and the long pause and the camera changes, it was perfect. I loved it. And then she calls out Juliana as being a threat. And Juliana's kind of like, okay. And I think it was a really fun moment. I loved it.
That was a real time pause. Like I
believe it. Good for Taylor.
Yeah. So yep, we get through like the whole thing. The big lead up to tribal council was that there's so many names getting thrown out there, but also Juliana wanted to tell Ryan to play his idol, officially tell him that he needed to play his idol, and he does play his idol. Charlie, do you think, I guess you ask this question to Ryan and we'll see how he answers it, but I want to know how you would interpret this. You ask Ryan, like, so Juliana told you to play your idol. Do you think she'll take credit for that move later on? Or how are you going to be able to like navigate that as your move playing that at tribal council? Like, see, like knowing that Juliana leaked that to Ryan, like who has the more agency after this tribal council in that relationship? Whose move would you consider that to be?
I mean, I would say that Juliana is very, very like the best at the political side of this game in terms of really setting herself up to make, like, this is a safe move for her. Like Ryan was, I would say 99% sure he was going to play this idol before this tribal council without being told to do so. But because she laid that groundwork earlier and was able to like still play with him and be able to give him that look or tell him, like, she can take some credit for this, and I think it'll pay off for her. I do think though that it was like I think she's finding good safe moves to make. Like I don't think this was a big move for her that would like change the game for her, but I think it is something that she can add on the resume and kind of take away from Ryan a little bit.
Exactly. It's another thing like I mentioned earlier that she has done, although it's not like a huge thing, but it's another thing that she's done that people don't know she's done, that if she makes that final three, she can say, oh, I did this that you didn't know about. I did this you didn't know about. I did this you did. And she has a great case if she makes
Yep.
it. I mean, good on Taylor for calling her out, because Juliana's. There are a lot of people who have significant resumes in the game, but Juliana's, I don't think people are seeing the resume. So good on Taylor for calling it out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we end the episode. Kyle gets his torch snuffed with going home. He gets to go take his shower. Kyle, leaving the game, what was kind of your mindset like leaving? I know you were kind of happy that you got to finally like lay down and nap in a real bed and stuff, but what was your mindset like leaving? Like, how did you feel?
You know, I probably didn't show it that well, but it actually was a little disappointing going home. I mean, it was definitely really fun to be in, and I honestly I thought it would have been funny as hell if I had made it to the final three. Like, just
we were all
me,
hoping for that.
me next to like two powerhouse players, like that would have been hilarious. But I mean, I kind of saw like it is my time to go. I've goofed around enough, I've had my fun, and it was one of the best showers I've ever taken in a long time. But again, I mean, I was disappointed, but I was fulfilled. I think I had done a decent job in the game for where I was at.
I agree completely. I was really sad personally to see you go, because I think you were, not only were you a really fun character, but I think genuinely, like I mentioned earlier, I think you were a pretty good player. So it hurt to see you go over some others. I'm not going to say names, but we all know.
Yeah. So I guess we can start into our power player rankings of the week. I know beforehand, we don't know where each other is at with this. I also like don't know where I'm gonna start off with this. I think a lot of mine can be interchangeable. But yeah, Drew, you want to start off?
Can I not go first? Because my number 2 and 3, I'm still flipping back and forth between.
Okay,
I'll go first.
Yeah.
I think I'll throw Tom at number 3. I think he involved himself in the right conversations in this episode. He won that immunity because, like Drew said, he is in such a good social position, and part of his immunity win was that. You didn't really see his name come up for any of the bad things either, and he also wasn't receiving the rocks, and that's why he won. I do think he kind of facilitated some of the Ryan conversation in a way that helped that actually happen. While I don't think anyone can really take credit for that move, I think he did a good job of being involved in that and being there for that. And yeah, I think this game, this episode, he started playing a little harder again. I think he's kind of taken a little bit off, and this one he's coming back into it.
Mm-hmm. I think Tom's a good pick. Kyle, what about you?
Am I doing my top one?
No, you're number 3. Who's getting your 1 point? Your number 3 player of the week, and then we'll go up to number 1.
So is number 1 good, or is number 1 good, or is that
number 1 is
okay?
Good. Number 1 was the best player. Number 3 is the third best player.
Okay, yeah, I think I'd have to agree with Charlie then on Tom as well. I mean, he's been playing a really good social game, and he's just been really like involved in like the conversation. He's managed to sway things here and there this last episode. And I think he's in a really good position to kind of maybe not necessarily win an immunity to the final 3, but build that bond to take him to the final 3.
I think that's fair. Drew, did you figure yours out yet, or you want me to go?
I got you. For number 3, I think I'm going to go with Ryan. I think having a successful idol play is, it's flashy, first of all. It's something that everybody's been waiting on, both in-game and viewers. He started that relationship with Juliana. He has the thing with Sydney, and while he doesn't trust Sydney, it's unclear if Sydney is still wanting to work with him moving forward or not. So, I'll give Ryan a point.
Okay.
He was who I was trying to – he was my honorable mention. I'll say that.
Yeah, I think I have like a handful of honorable mentions, and I know that's kind of weird to say because we have 9 and we're only giving 3. I think Ryan is getting my honorable mention for this week as well, only because I think finally people caught on to what he was doing. I think his montage of, trying to throw out Bridget's name and getting things going, I think people will finally put their foot down and were like, no, like we got to do this and move forward. And while his idol play is very epic and a long time coming, I do think there was some stronger games going in. And I don't know how anybody else is going to interpret this, but I do want to give this player some kudos for how they were able to navigate this round. No matter how people may think she doesn't deserve to be there, I think Claire gets my 1 point, mostly because, it is really hard to be playing that game and as hard as she has, and we've kind of seen behind the scenes, and receive that and not let it really phase you and continue, playing pretty well. I think one of like an underrated move is her wanting to not vote Ryan, so that she can still, cultivate that trust with him. And so she was one of the 2 votes for Kyle this round. And so just kind of being self-aware and thinking that's much ahead and letting other people kind of burn those bridges, and making sure that she's at least one person that doesn't vote for him, even though she's voted for him in the past. I think, it's a little bit of a move. And I do think, she was one of the last 4 standing. She's very socially connected, it seems like. So I'm going to throw her a bone and say, Claire, you did deserve to be here this week. So
I just wanted to give Claire a hug after this episode. Like, I just felt really bad for her. And I do think that she has somewhat of a route to make it to the end. I don't know if she can win, but if these bigger players, the bigger strategists, are going to keep taking each other out and we get left with a group of, Claire, Taylor, Brendan, Tom. I mean, Claire's the best strategist probably out of that group, and that she can make big moves if she can just continue to maintain being under the radar.
I think she's definitely like started to elevate herself from kind of bottom of the pack to getting up to that middle ground, kind of dangerous, because if they do slip through, there's a chance,
Yeah,
I think she's starting to get to that.
It's just sadly, unfortunately for her, it's just all about perception. I think Dom and I had this text conversation earlier in the week where people from the start of the game have viewed Claire as, oh, Claire's just here because she's good at puzzles. Claire's good at puzzles. That's what she's here for. She's smart. And I don't think people are viewing her as a threat, which is great early in the game, I guess. But at this point, people are viewing her as disposable, which is sad to see.
Yeah. Well, I hope that she appreciates the point for this week for me. Drew, who is your number 2?
My number 2 is Juliana. I was flipping back and forth between Juliana and Ryan for number 2 and number 3. But ultimately, I'm going with Juliana. Taylor called her out as a threat, and everybody else kind of blew it off. She started the thing with Ryan. Like I've been saying, her resume is building up, and people don't know about it. I think Juliana has positioned herself well where the girls like her. She has Ryan on the side. I think she could really pull some strings. She's one of the stronger girls. I'm going with Juliana for number 2.
Okay. Charlie, what about you?
I'm going to go Bridget. I think, as we've kind of alluded to in the rest of this conversation, I think that she has kind of navigated things decently well for being on the chopping block the past couple episodes. And I think ultimately getting Ryan's idol out of the way and then getting out Kyle kind of helps her out, because now there's another boy that's gone. So the girls' alliance can kind of come to her defense if need be, even though some of them are thinking about flipping on her. But then also Ryan's opened back up as a target. And so her name won't come up as much, hopefully, if Ryan's out. And I think she recognizes that. And I think she, like some of the other players in this game, are thinking further ahead than other people are. And I think she had a pretty solid episode with all things considered.
Bridget has such a complex gameplay style. Like I said earlier, I was confused by her, but I think it's just complex, and I really enjoy that.
Yeah. Kyle, what about you? Number 2.
My number 2, I'd have to go with Ryan. I just think that him losing that safety net of having an idol, I think it's going to burn a fire under him. And the next challenge, he is going to go all out. And I think he's the type of player that will not go down without a fight. I think he's definitely going to show some moves this next episode.
Cool.
Okay. Yeah, fair, solid. My number 2 is also Juliana. I think it's a really, really cool story that we've had thus far, where she's making this pre-merge plan to go after Ryan, yet she's been able to adapt to this situation on day 3, and being his number 1 enemy behind the scenes to being his number 1 ally behind the scenes. I'm excited to see how that kind of progresses for the 2 of them and how that works out. Not just that, I do think while she's on people's radars, she still was able to kind of navigate this vote. She was one of the two people that, figured out the numbers. And I, that's another plan that she at least had her hands in, that you can go back and say, all while being Ryan's supposed number one in the background. So she's getting my 2 points. And Drew, your number one for the week.
Every season of reality TV that I've watched, I end up standing at least one player. And from episode 1, I was a loud and obnoxious Tom stan. And, for us Tom stans, it's been a rough few weeks. But I can gladly say that this week I'm giving 3 points to Tom. We're back in business. I'm back to standing Tom. Not only did he prove himself to be in a good social position within the challenge by people not targeting him, he got a lot of the answers to the questions right, showing that he had his pulse on what other people were feeling. He's perfectly in the middle where nobody's throwing Tom's name out anymore, but he's in the majority of these votes. He's voicing his opinions on things and people are listening. He has large group connections with people like the Bridget, Sydney, Juliana group. He also has this weird thing with Brendan. He's in such a good position. Like, who's throwing out Tom's name anymore? He had a rough mid-game, but our boy's back on the upswing, and we love to see it. So I'm unashamedly giving 3 points to Tom.
Nice. Bless you, Charlie. What about you for your number one? Your number one, Charlie.
Oh, my number one. I'm going Juliana. I mean, she's the strongest player in the game right now. I think that, like I've always said, every time I'm on this show, she thinks so much farther ahead than everybody. Nobody talks about Final Three as much as she does. Nobody talks about jury as much as she does. She's very aware of what's going on. I will say I don't think her resume is as under the radar as we were saying earlier in the episode. Like, I think her name getting thrown out there is because people recognize that she's kind of got a resume building, but she does have some stuff that she's got in her arsenal that she can whip out at any time. And I think it's funny though, sometimes that I think she damages her standing a little bit sometimes when she talks about how well she did in a challenge with people. Like, she's like, oh, I got second. Maybe I should take it off the next one. I'm like, I don't think anyone remembers the second or third place in the challenges as much as she does, like in the cast at least. And so I think she needs to cool it on that a little bit, and keep going for first place though. I don't like people taking off challenges. I think she's doing really well in them and should keep going with that. But she's just the strongest player in the game. I can't give it to anyone else.
Juliana is also a really fun confessionalist, I'm finding. Like, when she's like when she wants to do something, she's so like fired up and passionate in her confessionals, and I love to see that from her.
Mm-hmm. She's great to edit around as well. I at least have 5 minutes of footage of her. Like, granted, maybe 2 minutes of it is her repeating what she said in the first 3 minutes, but I just get it in a different way. So she is a great confessionalist, and she does have a really good pulse on the game. I'm not mad at her being at number one. Kyle, what about you? Your number one of the week.
I would have to go with Taylor. I think her calling Juliana out was actually a really powerful move, and it might even deter people from wanting to go with Juliana now. I think she may have set herself up to really knock out a big player, and that could help her game out tremendously right now.
Nice.
I love Taylor. I love that she did that. I don't think this is going to go great for her, but I love Taylor for doing that. Good for her.
I do think that's something that I do think Taylor knows how to play and what moves need to be made. I just don't think she has the social pull to do that. How Charlie said people are noticing. If Taylor's like noticing, it matters if you're able to like get other people to do it. And I do think Taylor did have a really strong episode because, she's focused on Ryan, wants to get him out. And she seems to be the only one that doesn't really care about how like the votes get split as long as she's just over it. And I think that still is pretty like badass in the sense of like, playing the game, still balls to the wall in like her own special way. And like, I think that's a really unique game that she's played, and it's worked for her thus far. But my number one, I'm going with Bridget. I think we saw a really strong episode from Bridget this episode. She kind of came out, I don't want to say guns blazing after the whole fiasco of the last her name was on the chopping block with the Addison vote, and I think she really felt the need to be able to like put something in her favor for once. And so I think she took the reins, talked to the people that she needed to talk to, and got a plan together with the help of other people. But she really, drove that vote in the way that she wanted to. And she also, like, Ryan is against her. And so her planning that out, I think is knowing her name is on the line is pretty bold. So I think Bridget gets my number one for the week. And that will wrap up our power players for this week. Again, if you are tuning in, you can be sure to find those over on our social media, Survivor Grand Rapids on Instagram and on Facebook. I tally up all those points and update them week to week. So this should be a big one. We have some names on here that haven't been on here in quite a while. See where everybody falls. And it's an exciting week. We do have 2 more episodes left of Survivor Grand Rapids. How are we going to get rid of 8 people in 2 episodes? Find out. How am I going to edit 2 episodes?
It'd be juicy.
How am I going to edit 2 episodes where 8 people will get out? I don't know. We'll figure that out soon. But Drew, any last questions for Kyle before we go?
Kyle, I'm going to ask you the same question I always ask everyone. Well, actually, I have 2 questions. I like this question that I asked Addison last week. Number 1, what would be your biggest piece of advice for anybody who's going to play Survivor Grand Rapids in the future?
My biggest advice is just go out there and just, do you. I mean, obviously that's what I did and it worked, but you really just got to go out there and have fun. Like, it is a big strategy and like social game, but you can't beat yourself up about it. And people are going to say things like the challenge we recently had. You just got to brush it off and just enjoy the moment and, make friends along the way. It's a really fun ride. It really is. No matter when you get voted out or how long you make it, it always seems like everyone's there to have fun and just get to know each other. And it really is quite an experience.
Yeah, I will say.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say every single person who I've talked to who's played has said that it's been a blast. And that kind of leads me into my question that I always ask, and that is, would you play again?
Oh, 100%. I would totally play again. I'd play a little more smarter next time. Like, I'd actually try and talk to people and play the social game. But I would be on board in a heartbeat to play again. It was a blast. Dom put on such a great production. His editing skills are amazing in this. It's an all around. It's a great atmosphere. You're around some people who are amazing, and they're all just there to have fun and just you got to make people laugh and smile. That's all you got to do in the game, really.
Oh yeah, Kyle, you playing as yourself, you are a top 3 most entertaining person that we've ever had on the show easily. Probably number 1. I'd have to go back and watch older seasons, but you're top 3 for sure. You were so much fun to watch. You have an eye for showmanship. I think you need to look into acting or something.
Or apply to Real Survivor.
Yeah.
I would love you.
Oh my
Dude,
God.
you're so fun.
Yeah, Kyle, I'm just echoing what everybody's kind of said already, but I'll give you my last spiel. I truly do appreciate you coming out and playing. I know it took a lot to leave the bird bath factory for the 3 days and help out, but not seeing you kind of come into your own around like everybody and, own the Rat King and make it like, make it a thing that's like fun. It was infectious, not just with the cast, but with the crew. Like I put so many things behind the scenes of just you making like the crew laugh and have so much fun with that. It was so much fun to be able to edit, and there's so much just left on the editing room floor that I wouldn't be able to put in just because, I need room for other people. But Kyle, having you on was so much fun. And while you kept saying like, I don't know how I got here, I don't deserve to be here. I think you showed everybody on this game why you deserve to be there. Not just for playing the game, but also just being yourself, and you're fun to be around. And it was so much fun to be able to have you there. Snuffing your torch was one of the hardest things that I had to do because, it was just a blast to have you play. And I'm sure if we do a returnee season, you'll be one of the first people to get the call. So again, thank you so much for coming out and playing, because it was an absolute blast. And the comment section was a wreck on this last episode, seeing that you're gone. So my dad too, he called, he's like, well, why'd they get Kyle out? And here's a fun fact for you guys. While Kyle's worried about the entire game, about him going home, that his name is on the line from day one, Jen throwing out, if we have to vote somebody out, it's Kyle. Kyle got voted out with 2 votes to his name the entire game. That is the least amount of votes like anybody has had like thus far. I think Juliana and Sydney might have 1 apiece. I'm not sure if Taylor has any, but up until this point, I think Kyle, like you had the least amount of votes going home, not just in Survivor Grand Rapids. I think you're ranked like number 3 out of all of Survivor Dearborn and Survivor Grand Rapids for the least amount of votes going home. So that is still a massive accomplishment to your name as well.
King.
So King stays king. We'll see. I'm sure that'll carry over into All Stars where you win unanimously after not getting any single votes throughout the season. So
after winning every immunity challenge.
Exactly. So Kyle, again, thank you so much for being here. As for everybody tuning in, we do kind of have an update. I am working my tail off to make sure that we have an episode out this week, but I can't really make any promises because it is a jam-packed episode with these 2 finale. We have our finale and then we have this episode coming out. And so it's a lot of editing on my end of things. Work is picking up and I'm trying my best to be able to get it out. So hoping, fingers crossed, we're able to do this for you guys and have this out. If we do have it out, it'll be out on Wednesday at 7:00. So be sure to tune in and see the aftermath of the Rat King's demise and who picks up the crown after that and carries the torch, I guess, into the next episode. Or follow us on social media and make sure you keep up to date with what our posting schedule is going to be like. Again, I hate to take off another week just because you guys have been so patient. But yeah, I'm editing these week to week and it is taking a toll on me. So hopefully we are able to and we can move forward. But if not, be sure to follow up and follow us on social media and keep up to date with that. Drew, as always, thank you so much for following up and letting us know your thoughts on the episode. It's always a blast to have you as the co-host for here. And Charlie, thanks for providing your veteran insight on the game and the production side of things. It's a blast. Kyle, again, thanks for tuning in. And for all those in the comment section, I hope you have a great rest of your Sunday. Happy Monday tomorrow. Enjoy your week and hopefully see you on Wednesday. Bye, guys.